Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of Impact Talks. Today we have a good friend of mine, Ryan, who I've known for years. He's an entrepreneur who started a business, sold a business, and has done many things in between. Ryan, please introduce yourself to everybody else.
Hey, I'm Ryan Tripp. As Love said, started a business called LTX Solutions a few years ago. Sold that about a year and a half ago to a private equity company out of New York, and partnered with a company called Redwood Logistics that I'm working with now. And I've also started a couple other companies as well, in the accounting and finance space, as well as the real estate market. Yeah, excited to be here, Lova. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So last time we've seen each other was in Barcelona. What have you been up to since then?
Yeah, actually, I think the last time we saw each other was last summer in Amsterdam.
Last summer was pandemic, man. We haven't traveled for 2 years.
Summer of 2019, right?
Yeah, pandemic has been going on for a year and a half now. Crazy. It goes fast, huh?
Yeah.
How was the whole thing for you? Like, have you been affected too much?
No, it's fine. We went down, kind of rode out the pandemic for the most part, down on the island in the Gulf of Mexico, kind of working there. We moved our entire team remote.
What is your team now? Because you sold your startup, so what do you do now?
Yeah, well, we sold the startup. We started our company in 2016, right? We kind of pivoted away from the traditional full truckload brokerage model, heavy assets, warehousing, and kind of went the tech heavy, the tech forward, new age. Logistics is kind of one of the last frontiers where the technology revolution is just now occurring. And so we kind of got on the forefront of that when started a company called LTX Solutions, which was in it's the less than truckload market, right? So if you're not familiar with the different types of freight, you kind of have, your parcel, which is, your FedEx and your UPS and your DHL. And from there you have less than truckload, which is kind of the next step up, right? You're putting it on a pallet, you're wrapping it, you're sitting on a truck, but you don't have enough to fill up an entire truckload. And so that's kind of where we played in our space. We implemented technology, partnered with big time manufacturers, and really grew that space from a tech-centric perspective. So we started that in 2016, sold it in 2019. But it's kind of one of those things where we were both so my partner and I were both so intrinsic to the business, right? We're so involved in the business. It wasn't like hey, you sell this and you walk away, right? We were looking for partners where we could take it to the next level and be a part of something bigger, right? So we found a group in Chicago, Illinois, backed by private equity partners in New York, that came in and purchased it in a full equity deal. But so now we're part of the new machine. So,
do you then work as employees or shareholders?
It's both, right? So shareholders, and we also work in the business.
So right now, what is your role exactly? What's the title?
Right. So I'm the Senior Vice President of Financial Planning and Analysis, right? So, we're in the process. We've gone, Redwood has gone from a company in 2017 that, had maybe $250 to $300 million in revenue, right? And so since that time, we've gone through 5 acquisitions, right? We're managing a little over $2.5 billion in freight. And so it's just been tremendous growth. And so kind of what I've been doing over the past, year and a half and going forward is, helping build out the finance and the back end of the company to scale, right? Because, ultimately our goal is to sell again.
How did you... Okay, so we've had many conversations, and I think I've never really asked you, or we kind of had it really shortly, where I asked you, how did you come up with the idea? Because I think you were already doing something in the space, and then you and your partner came up with it. Can you give, the full story of how you came up with the idea, how you decided to, I think you had a job, leave it, and start this thing?
Yeah, so I was fortunate and blessed with a partner who grew up in from the very young age in the logistics space, right? His father, who was one of our board members and initial investors, grew up in freight, went to school in freight, and he actually got his university degree, in logistics and supply chain, which wasn't, not everybody was doing that. There wasn't a lot of programs, back in the 70s, that were teaching supply chain. So he worked in freight his whole life. My partner Adam, when he was a kid, if he wanted to see his dad, right, he went down to the docks, right? So spending the summer sweeping the docks and kind of learning the ropes. And then when his dad, the company he was working for, it's called Carolina Freight, sold to ABF Freight back in the 90s, when he started his own warehousing and trucking company, all full truckload warehousing, actual physical trucks, moving it around. And so Adam kind of got his, MBA in freight, from a very young age. So when he came to me, he was working with his dad. When he came to me and said, hey, I just can't do this full truckload warehousing anymore, right? I'm pivoting, and I want to go a completely new direction, basically a completely new company, and go into the LTL space, right? And would I be interested in coming and joining and building it with him? And so, my background was accounting and finance. Worked with, Coke Industries for 5 or 6 years, really getting immersed in their business philosophy and kind of how they make money. And so we came in, partnered up, and
How old were you at the time, and how old was Adam, your partner, I think?
Yeah, so Adam, so I was 28, and Adam was 32.
So you you sold the business 3 years later. So you were 31 and he was 35.
31. Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to close start your 30s. What was the philosophy? So from all of our conversations, I think for our audience, the most relevant thing was that I've learned from you mostly was that experience you had before the company that I think really set the tone of how you created the culture within the startup. I remember in the early years you were telling me about that. So what is it that you learned exactly before the startup? What are these business philosophies that set the tone in your startup?
Sure, yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with Coke Industries or, Charles Koch and the late David Koch, right? So, they built their company, not necessarily from the ground up. I think Charles took over his dad's company. It was valued around $20 million at the time. And then over the next 40, 50 years, he's grown it to, an enterprise worth well over $100 billion. And so, kind of the results are there for him. And he kind of attributes that to what he calls market-based management, or MBM philosophy. And so it's one of the really good things about working, in a Coke company is you get exposed to this philosophy, right? And it's basically the secret sauce that he credits all of his success to. And a lot of it is centered around employees and culture, right? But also, how do you, align incentives, right? How do you share knowledge, those type of things, and how do you create the systems and the processes to do that effectively at scale, right? Because it's easier when you're a small company and you've got 4 or 5 folks. It's very easier to transfer knowledge to those people, right? But when you start getting much larger, right, even to 10, 12, 15, 80, right, and then overnight you're 1,200 employees. Like, how do you facilitate, downloading your knowledge and your experiences and your processes to your employees, so that they can implement it in their day jobs, right? And
so how do you do it? Can you share some?
Sure. A lot of it is, I think a big piece that we've implemented and have a lot of success in is feedback mechanisms, right? So how do leaders in the company get feedback, right, and share feedback, right? So, we do what we call a 360 review process, right? So, basically it's like an employee review. Every employee has what we call an RRNE, or it's a document that kind of outlines their roles, responsibilities, and expectations. Hey, like, what are you responsible for in your role, right? And what are the expectations and the outcomes that you should be expecting? And every employee is different, right? Every employee has, different comparative advantages. And so every R&E is different, right? It can sometimes kind of read as a job title, right, or a job description, but it's not, right? Because every individual has different strengths, right, that they can bring to the table and bring to the group, right? And also you have to kind of mesh that with the rest of the employees, in their individual groups, right? Because they all have different comparative advantage, and you have to kind of stack that to get the best outcome. And so every employee is connected to this R&E document, right? It's kind of a tool to facilitate conversations with supervisors and teams, to kind of say, hey, how are you connected to the vision of the business, right? And how are you creating value according to that vision, right? And so that's kind of the first step. We've got the R&E, and then we do what's called a 360 review process, right? Where we're getting feedback and soliciting feedback through an actual mechanism, right? So it's a 360 review, like everybody knows what it is. We've got a form, and so let's say I was, needed, you're in a direct report of mine, and I'm trying to get feedback from, your peers, as well as your, internal customers and sometimes external customers, right? Where, I'm going to send, a request to people that you work with, and trying to get a full 360 degree view. So people that are on your level, people that are under your level, and people that are above your level, to really kind of see, hey, what is the full feedback circle that you're getting, right? And as well as how do you feel that you've been doing? And so I think that's really important, right? It's a really good way to kind of transfer knowledge down the chain, right? From the very top, everybody in the whole company is doing it, right? And it kind of moves it all the way down.
When you guys started the startup, did you guys have employees already, or was it just the two of you?
Oh, we had employees. So we had about, I think, 7 employees right out the gate. We started with freight. So we started with customers. Kind of started the company around 3 specific customers, but one in particular called Floor and Decor. I don't know if you've heard of them. They've gotten pretty large here. We started with Floor and Decor when they had 1 store in Atlanta, Georgia. And by the end of our first year, they had over 150 stores.
Jesus. Did you pick specifically clients that you knew were going to grow, or was it just by accident?
Dumb luck.
How do you deal with that? A client that 100x's their business and kind of, I can assume, expects you to keep up. How do you keep up?
Oh, it was tough, man. So
share some stories.
Yeah. So kind of the way that we got and landed Floor and Decor, they were starting to build out their supply chain and look to figure out how to do it. And so they were talking to the obvious big name dogs, right? Echo Logistics, C.H. Robinson, these guys who could go out, get them rates, handle their supply chain, and those guys would have been able to do it fine, right? They're big box, types. And Floor and Decor would kind of had to fit in there. And so we took a different approach of we're customizable to you. We're small. We're kind of like the speedboat, right, to their cruise ship, right? Cruise ships can't really turn and maneuver very well, right? They're going one direction, and that's what it is. But, we implemented a thought process hey, we're going to be a speedboat where we can turn and move and turn around and, kind of be what you need us to be, as a logistics partner. And so kind of the turning point was, Floor and Decor had a shipment that was not getting delivered, and Adam actually drove 150 miles at 7 p.m. at night on a Friday and physically unloaded the truck. and so he calls the transportation manager and he says, is C.H. Robinson going to do that for you? Right, and of course the answer is no. And so we kind of got our shot there, and then got lucky as Floor and Decor scaled and grew, very, very quickly. And they kind of, I wouldn't say funded our business, but we didn't have to take on debt, because we had a customer like that.
So you also didn't give up equity as you were growing your business for new investors.
We did initially, right? So initially we started with an equity partners. It was a company out of Jacksonville, Florida, not a company. It was one very wealthy individual out of Jacksonville, Florida, that he started a small private equity company, and we were their first investment. And so initially we did raise about $900,000.
But throughout the process, you didn't have to because you had the backing of this individual, or?
We didn't have to take any more money as well either, right? So essentially, they just kind of came in as an initial equity swap at the beginning, and then we never raised money again.
But so, what you experienced is kind of the definition of hyper growth. Like suddenly, you have to do 100x what you were doing, like in a couple of months. Didn't you have? How did the process go for you? Was it like, oh, okay, we can do this really easy? We just copy paste systems, or were there like sleepless nights?
Oh, there were hundreds and hundreds of 16, 20-hour days. Yeah, there was one time, so as Floor and Decor got, going back to Floor and Decor, as they got bigger and bigger, right, we started, the payments for their freight became longer and longer, right? So they were not a good freight payer. Typically, our customers pay us within 30 days, right? So, we negotiate the rates, shipment happens, right? Carrier sends an invoice, and there's, 30 to 45 day payment terms. Typically, customers will pay us in 30 days. We turn around and pay the carrier in 35 to 45 days, right? So we were always cash positive. Well, then Floor and Decor, sometimes they would pay in 30 days. Sometimes they would pay in 90 to 100 days. And so it's just like, my partner lost his hair, due to stress.
How did you solve that? My worst client that ever paid, I think, was 90 days, or maybe there was one exception that eventually did 120 because they really just screwed up everything. But like, there was a new law passed in the Netherlands that doesn't allow that to happen anymore. But how did you deal? Like, how did you and your partner deal with that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the solution. But first, we had there was one instance where we, to deal with it at first, right, we didn't have institutional help, right? We didn't have a real banking relationship. We were just with a community bank there in Georgia. And we had a carrier that we had been kind of stringing out because Floor and Decor hadn't been paying us, and we didn't have the cash to pay them, right? And so, it was a weekly occurrence where, we would write the checks to the carriers and they'd sit on my desk, and then we'd put those, we'd send the carriers an email, right, with the remittance information, say, hey, this is check number 895, and it's going out today. And then it would sit on my desk for a week and a half before we mail it out. And then at one time we had a carrier call us in the morning and say, you need to wire us $100,000 or we're turning the lights off on you. And so we figured it out, and we went and took several personal loans and wired the money personally over to the carrier by the end of the day to keep the lights on. But it was a lot of stuff like that, right? That, hey, you're kind of bootstrapping it and figuring it out. But eventually we got large enough, right? We got more than one customer. We kind of diversified our customer base. Had 6 or 7, fairly large customers. So we went from, zero revenue out the gate to, $40 million under management in a year and a half. So it's very, very fast growth. And from then, once we had kind of some financial stability, I went out and did a banking, relationship process, right? We went and interviewed, Wells Fargo's and Chase Bank.
What is that process? I've never heard of that process. What does that mean?
We're just finding a new banking partner, right? Banking relationships are very important, right? They can provide funding. So essentially, what we were trying to do was, get a partner with essentially what's called a line of credit, right? So hey,
okay. So you're establishing a relationship with a bank that will give you a line of credits. Okay, clear.
Right. So so we're not running into situations where we've got to fund a carrier that day. Like, hey, if we run into an issue, the bank gives us money to kind of get through it.
How did you solve the whole 90-day payout things?
It's something that's very common, right? Your giant corporations, right? Your Walmarts, your Sears, these type of companies, they still do it. Your PepsiCo's, Frito-Lay's, right? It's 100-day terms, right? So they have all this freight that they control, Right, and essentially what you have to do, and what we learned, is you have to negotiate that in with the carriers on the front end. So what we were doing to Floor and Decor on the front end was like, hey, every time they would increase the payment terms, we would increase the margin.
So they pay extra for increasing the payment terms.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So hey, like, you know, if you're not going to pay us on time, the margin or the cost of the freight is now more, right? And the carriers do the same thing to you now. It's just in a contract, right? So you say up front, you know, delineate, hey, this is what the payment terms are going to be. You know, we're going to pay you in 60 days. We're going to pay you in 75, whatever it is, right? And the carrier will adjust their rate that they give you in the contract based on that. The smart ones do.
I have a question. So you got the investor in, and so you have a wealthy individual in the company. Worst case, like things happen, but yet that guy calls you and says, "Hey, like things are bad. You have to wire the money." How come you couldn't turn to your investor to ask for the money?
And we could have, right? We could
How come
have.
you didn't then?
We didn't want to give up any more equity.
Oh, he would have asked for equity. He wouldn't have asked for like a loan with interest or
Right.
something. Smart. How has the journey been of selling the company? You obviously out the gate started really strong. No, first the question is, okay, so you started really strong. You had one client. How did you diversify? I think your partner was getting these new clients. How did he get these big clients?
Yeah, so we got clients through networking, right? So, you know, we're working on networking, and in our business, right, one client is a lot, right? So, you know, we sold our company and we only had 14 clients.
But like, how do you, like, what is networking for you? Because networking for me is like going to international conferences. I'm in the tech sector, so I'd be finding, you know, a lot of companies in the tech, like Web Summit, the Next Web, our event type of thing. Would you go to like specific freights and logistics conferences, or how?
Yeah, we did do that. Initially, honestly, it was at the golf course.
What?
Yeah.
Golf course?
We
Tell me more.
We're members of a couple country clubs in Atlanta, right? And you meet people through the golf course, right? You meet people through the clubs, and so we got our first probably 4 customers that way. Was, you know, through connections.
Can you share a story? Like, I can't imagine, like, how. Because a golf course, I've been on a golf course, and you're like with your friends, and you're waiting till the next one is finished, and then you move on to the next course. So, can you like share one story?
Sure, right. Yeah, but so typically when you go to like a public golf course and you play that way, it is that way, right? But, you know, at the clubs, it's, you know, it's membership only, and, you know, you play with different members, right? And you're on a golf course alone with, you know, I don't know, 2 other guys for 3 hours.
Oh, so they match you up with other members.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, you can obviously just go and play by yourself, but, you know, that's kind of how we leveraged it, right? And so I'll tell you, being alone, playing golf, drinking beer with a guy, if you can't sell what you do in the 3 hours that you got their undivided attention, like, then what you're doing is not good. So,
what's a membership cost at a clubhouse like that?
Oh, it differs by the club. You know, they can be, typically there's like an initiation fee of, you know, could be $5,000 to $100,000 depending on the club, and then there's monthly dues and stuff like that. So it's expensive.
But if you're in the right business, it becomes worth
Right.
it. So okay, so that's clear. I never expected that to be networking, but it sounds interesting. So how?
But we also did go to freight and logistics conferences. You know,
did you get
typically
something
in
out of
Vegas.
those? Do
We
you
did.
get? Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We actually landed our biggest customer. It's a furniture manufacturer out of get this, Santa Claus, Indiana. It's a real place.
That's a city, Santa.
It's a real place.
Awesome. And so,
Yeah,
did you have a
they have
booth
a Christmas
there?
theme park. Yes, we had a booth. And what these conferences do, they've gotten very good and very sophisticated in that they will. You have a booth as well, but then you're also going to conferences and you're paying for meetings, right? So the conference orchestrates with the vendors and also with the customers, right? And says, hey, they interview the customers and say, what do you do, right? And then you interview the vendors and they match you up, and so you have like a 15 to 20 minute meetings. I think they were mostly 20-minute meetings that they line you up all day, right? So we go in with 15 meetings a day with, basically, verified leads, verified customers who are looking for our services.
Can I ask how much you paid for those matchmakings?
It would between $20,000 and $30,000.
Just for the matchmakings, or was that with the
for the conference
included? Okay.
Yeah, that was the total for the conference.
Do you do it nowadays with the virtual conferences? Do you feel like they're even worth it?
So kind of the model that we kind of shifted to and take is basically it's like what we call a channel partner model, right? So essentially it's leveraging our networks, right? Leveraging our connections, and then typically, hey, people who work in roles, right? Especially as your career grows and you get more and more involved, right? You meet more and more people who know customers, who can introduce you and give you that kind of handshake introduction, right? Because that's what it's becoming more about, right? It's like, who do you know and who can you? It's all about who you can trust. And so what we've found and had tremendous success with is paying people in our networks to give us those handshake introductions to potential clients, right? And then when those clients, we pay them when those clients come on. Right?
Okay, yeah.
So you have your brother-in-law, right, is the transportation manager at some major manufacturing company, right? And you give me an introduction, say, hey, like, this is Ryan, he's working with LTX Solutions and think he could really help you. Right? And then we land that customer on the freight, like, you're going to get a percentage of their net revenue for 2 to 3 years.
Oh, so you do it not as a one-time fee, you do it as for a couple of years. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. But your deals are pretty big, so can I ask what somebody would be getting on average if they make an introduction like that?
I mean, we could pay people, 4 to 8% of net revenue, and net revenue could be $100,000 a month.
Holy shit! So one introduction would just put them. Okay, that's. I should look into my network. No, I'm joking.
Yeah,
but
so if you know anybody, hit me up.
No, but that's interesting, because when we do the same thing, but we give a one-time fee, which is a percentage of the initial contract. But you actually do it like as a 2-3 year deal.
Yeah, and so and it's structured in such a way that it encourages you to do more, right? So hey, it's big, right? And then in the first year, it may be 6%, right? And then in year 2, it drops down to 5% or 4%, right? And then year 3, it's down to 2 or 3%, right? And so what that does is, one, it tails it off, but it also encourages you and says, hey, like, do it again,
Yeah.
Give us more.
Okay, so pretty much you start like, let's say 5%, 4%, and then third year is like 2% or something.
Right.
And so okay, interesting. But that means that it's also encouraging for your clients to refer you to other clients.
We do have that. Typically we're not going to pay our clients. We don't have those type of agreements in place with our clients. But we do have clients. Hey, we've got a transportation manager at one company that we're very, very close with, right? And everything is relationship based, right? Especially in our business. And so they're close with a transportation manager at a sister company or a different company, and so we've been recommended into the new relationships that way as well.
So when you started growing, you started getting some clients, what was the process like of getting acquired? When did the first indication come that you might be getting acquired? What was going through your mind and your partner's mind?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we went through a very intense process, right? We probably interviewed 50 companies.
Were you actively selling it, or did somebody approach you?
I mean, we started the company with the mindset that we were going to sell it. we kind of had I wouldn't say it was a toxic relationship, but it was an uncomfortable relationship with our partners. They were silent, not involved in the business at all, but very, very restrictive. And, we had our own vision for how we kind of wanted the company to go. Originally we sought out to be a platform company. So essentially, private equity companies and, and sometimes individuals were coming in and offering us deals, right, with hey, they're going to come in, we're going to upgrade our partners, and they're going to give us essentially a war chest. And with that war chest, we're going to go make acquisitions to kind of bolt on to us as a platform company. So that was kind of the original thought process. It's like, hey, how do we really scale this thing and get it? Hey, we're at 40 million gross revenue right now. How do we scale this thing to 100 million? How do we scale it to 200 million? Right? And it really wasn't doable with the partnership and equity structure we had at the time. Right? We needed new partners that could come and they could give us acquisition money so that we could go out and buy the capabilities that we needed in order to scale and to service our customers, right? Because we had positioned ourselves in a kind of a niche market where we were just doing LTL, right? And kind of our selling point was like, hey, don't go to one of these big general doctors who do everything, right? We are, think of us as like, hey, like if you broke your ankle, you would go to a foot surgeon. Like we're your foot surgeon. You know what I mean? But I think what we're learning, or what we learned, and what we kind of always knew was, the really, really big companies, they need a partner that can do everything for them, right? Which is what Redwood has become, and we knew that. And so initially we were going out and we were going and saying, hey, like we need money to go acquire new capabilities as far as parcel, full truckload, international freight. We need to be able to offer these services to our clients, right? Because one, we're going to be able to service our existing clients much better, but also we're going to be able to start, to really acquire bigger and bigger clients and more of them, as we grow. And so, our process was, pretty simple. We partnered with a investment banker who introduced us to a bunch of private equity groups, and we got a lot of very interesting offers for them to come in, help us build it up, help us scale it, and really grow it. But in the end, the opportunity with Redwood, what they were doing in the tech space was just so incredible.
How did they find you? How did you find them?
So Redwood was actively looking for acquisition targets at the time, right? So they had kind of just started. They had just gotten their Redwood had just been purchased by the private equity group in 2017, right, or beginning of 2018, January of 2018, and they had purchased one other company called Simplified Logistics out of Cleveland, Ohio, and they were looking. They were looking to grow. They were actively looking on the market. And so they kind of found us through their investment bankers and our investment banker.
So that bank relationship you established led to these...
It's different.
Okay. But so it was just mostly networking that got you on their radar.
Yes. And we had gone up against Simplified Logistics a couple times.
And okay, so then how does it actually look like? So Redwood approaches you. I mean, I've seen it sometimes, some of our startups getting investors in. I've never, like, the startups we deal with are very young, so I haven't seen one yet get acquired. So what does that process look like?
Yeah, so Redwood was different for us. It was different than what we were looking at, right? We were initially looking and being approached as being a platform company, right? So we were going to be the guys, right? And so we didn't think that we would be ready to sell into a full acquisition like that. But so Redwood came knocking, and the guys, the leadership team with Redwood, they're visionaries in the logistics space and in the tech space, and kind of what they were starting to do and what we've been able to do since was something that we just couldn't pass up. And so they came knocking on our doors in 2018, right after they had sold to CI, and it took about a year, honestly, of going through typically deals, especially of that size and that dollar figure. Of our deal was, they bring in accounting firms and do audits and audit your IT and interview your management. And
How is that happening while you guys are running the business? Doesn't that require a lot of resources, time that you technically don't have because you're hyper growing?
Yeah, so essentially it took a lot of Adam and I's time, right? But we had built up a team of about 20, 22 employees at the time. And neither of us were extremely involved in the day-to-day operations, right? It was more, working on the business, right? And so we were able to, we both had right-hand guys that we were able to kind of dictate or, push down a lot more of the responsibilities to, who, really stepped up and handled all that. Because it was a ton of time on Adam and my part.
Really? What does a ton of time look like? Can you share a story or something?
Sure. It just, during the interview process, while we're interviewing companies, private equity companies, right? It's dinners and lunches and, preparing financials and, we were a relatively small company, but, we went through 2 audits. We partnered with a CPA firm, not a big 4, but it's, in the 5 to 8 range. And doing our audits, that was a very time-consuming activity. But yeah,
do you have to pay for those audits, or does Redwood pay for it?
Oh no, it's so during a deal, right? The acquiring company would pay. It's called what's called a quality of earnings. So it's essentially an audit, right? So they come in and they determine, hey, what is you say that your financial statements say this, right? Can we trust it? Right, and it helped a lot that we had gone through those audits the 2 years before, right? So we said, hey, Fraser and Dieter, very respectable CPA firm, has audited our books for the last 2 years, right? Things are in good shape, and so that helps a lot, right? And we did that strategically. That's typically a company of our size might not have paid $50,000 for an audit, but we did it 2 years in a row because we knew we were trying to sell, and we knew that would help in terms of that.
That's so smart. So pretty much if you're aware you're about to sell, it's good to spend a couple of years beforehand on a larger accounting firm just to audit your books.
Oh, absolutely. We made a lot of strategic decisions, geared towards selling, right? Even when it came down to using our CRM, right? We were using Hubspot and really liked Hubspot. But kind of what going through that private equity process taught us was that a lot of these PE guys, a lot of them are older, and some of them are younger. None of them know what HubSpot is.
Seriously?
And so it was just having to explain. They're oh, it's like Salesforce, and everybody knows what Salesforce is. So what we ended up doing was moving to Salesforce.
Serious? Oh wow.
So we geared our CRM that way. We geared our accounting that way. Once we partnered with NetSuite, which is powered by Oracle. And so we had NetSuite as our accounting partner and our basically our bookkeeping, our accounting software, which is really beneficial because even when we sold to Redwood, Redwood was using some outdated version of Microsoft General Dynamics, right? And kind of one of the first projects we did, after the acquisition was we onboarded 3 systems that we were using. We were very tech forward. NetSuite, Salesforce, and Tableau. I don't know if you're familiar with Tableau, but all 3 of them Redwood has adopted and implemented and done so way better than we had. But
what do you think about Salesforce? Because obviously we looked over HubSpot and Salesforce, and Salesforce seemed so archaic to me. Is that
no,
true?
Salesforce is it's by far the best on the market.
Really?
And it's not even close. Yeah.
So what can you do with Salesforce that you can do with HubSpot, for instance?
It's more the implementations and the integrations, right? The way that you can modify Salesforce out of the box, right? So if you're a small startup, it doesn't matter. For us at LTX, HubSpot was better in the sense that it was easier to use.
Yeah.
And in that case, but once you get into very large scale organizations, like the size of Redwood or larger, right? The adaptability of Salesforce is extremely powerful.
So can you give an example of how you use Salesforce then?
So we have at Redwood they have sales team of about, I think, maybe 25 sales reps. And so everything is in Salesforce. It's kind of what we call our source of truth. We're loading in it's database backed, right? So we're loading in, customer financials. We're doing commission calculations out of there. Everything. We're doing obviously the normal things, right? The communication is logged, but HubSpot does that.
Yeah. Okay, but so for logistics and all these like modifications that might happen, Salesforce might be a better option because of all the complexities involved.
Right, yeah. It's a much more powerful tool. Not to take anything away from HubSpot. HubSpot is great.
Yeah, I really like the interface of HubSpot. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, I use HubSpot for my consulting company.
Nice. So then you got acquired. Apparently it takes a year of you and so it's literally you and your partner's time. It's not like you guys could split up somehow. One runs the company, one does the interviews.
Yeah, and really it was both of us. It took up tons and tons of time. We still ran the company. We still were involved in the company and running the company, but it's a full-time job to go sell your company.
I wanna zoom out a little bit, and like this story, I think most of the people that know you like know it, maybe not this much in detail, but what was the personal life like? What was like, this is hyper growth you're going through. Obviously you're not alone as you're going through it, but how was it in your personal life going through these stories, like getting personal loans to pay off people, like how did your wife deal with it, and friends, and what was did you have time for sports, or were you at the golf course all the time networking?
It takes a toll on personal life, right? And both of us have very good women behind us. They're very strong on their own. But it takes a toll, and it takes mutual understanding of like, hey, this is temporary, right? It's that was kind of the motto, is this is temporary. We're working towards a specific goal, and kind of once we achieve that goal, things will calm down, and they did. Right?
Did you think it was going to happen in 3 years though?
Kind of after the first year, yeah, right? Because we had achieved so much in that from November of 2016 to November of 2017. We had onboarded 3 giant customers. 400 core was growing like crazy, and so that was when we said, hey, like we thought this was going to be in 3 years we're going to go start looking, but it looks like we're there 12 to 18 months.
Wow. So then you got acquired. How did your personal life change after that? Were you still like working crazy hard, and still like how do things change after that?
Well, we got acquired by a company that was well out of startup phase, right? They were very much an established company with much better processes and procedures and controls and people. Right, we're a company of almost 1,000 people now, and so before at LTX it was Adam and I, we did everything. So,
is the acquisition number public, by the way, from your startup?
No, it's not
okay.
public.
Yeah. But then so you pretty much now just have a normal job. You're not stressed or anything. You don't have over hours that you have to do.
Well, it depends, right? So I'm one of those workaholic types that if I'm not working on something, then I'm not happy. So we're still working. So Redwood's ultimate goal is to sell again, right? So it's private equity owned. So kind of the nature of private equity is they raise a fund, they go buy companies, they build them up, and then they sell it, and they've got to return that fund plus a return to those investors. And so Redwood will sell again at some time in the future, and so that's kind of the vision of the company, right? Is building it for scale, right? But it will be sold, and so.
But we'll how much revenue does Redwood do now? 20 billion, you said, or it's some crazy number?
I wish. We're managing a little over 2 billion in freight.
2 billion. Okay, so who do you go for acquisition at that point? Like DHL or something? Like FedEx?
So it could be future private equity partners. It could be the same group that reinvests. I don't know, but the pool is smaller. Obviously, the pool would be smaller as to who could make that acquisition.
Why go through that story again? I mean, you pretty much, I don't know, like, I know how to phrase it, but you've pretty much done it. Like 3 years, bomb, you've made huge profits. You did something that not a lot of people can do. You sold. Why go get a job? Why not just cash out, start a new business, or just consult like a lot of startup founders do that sold and have a bunch of money?
Well, so typically, and you see this happen over and over and over again, right? The blueprint for selling your company, right, is you build a startup and you sell it to, whether it's private equity or whatever, right? So you go 3, 5, 10 years, however long that takes, and you initially sell your company, and you typically don't cash out, right? You typically roll. In that case, that's what Adam and I did, right? And we've got another partner as well, and we all rolled. And so when that happened, so in this instance, when Redwood sells again, right, our initial investment in Redwood, will have tripled or quadrupled in that time, right? Because that's typically the nature of private equity, right? Is they're raising a fund, they make investments, and they're trying to get 3 to 4 times, and that's not every private equity, but most private equities are trying to get 3 and 4 times their investment, right? And so when you're investing with those guys, you also are getting 3 to 4 times your investment. It's very difficult in the market to go and get a 3 times return in 3 to 4 years.
But I mean, at the same time, you are having a proper job, which is, I think, well, actually, that's a good thing to explore, because a lot in the business community we're in, for instance, a lot of guys just want freedom. So what you're saying here is, hey, I sold my business, but I got a job. What's the argument for getting just money wouldn't be enough an argument, I think, to get the job. Why not just have the freedom?
I mean, you absolutely can do that, right? But the blueprint and the model, right? And like I was saying, you see this all the time. Is guys, hey, they build their company, they sell it for $3 million to a private equity group, right? And they are then they have those private equity partners, but they're still growing that business, right? And so we're still growing, the LTX business. It's just now Redwood. But they grow that business with that new private equity group, and then they sell that in 3 to 4 years, and that $3 million they got is now $10 million. And then in 4 or 5 years after that, they sell it again, and that's now $40 million, right? And so that's how you see these guys who, hey, they sold a company, and then 15 years later, they're worth $100 million.
Clear. So then that's pretty much the plan. Have you ever thought about not continuing, just cashing out and doing something completely different?
Sure, right, sure. And those options, were on the table when, we were talking about selling. It's like,
what was that conversation like with Adam? Like, obviously Redwood comes, it's about to happen, you just need to sign something. What's the conversation like?
Yeah, so the reason that we partnered with Redwood was because their leadership team, they're about 10 to 15 years older than us. And the cultures fit incredibly well, right? Redwood has an amazing culture. We were very proud of our culture, right? As we've talked about before. But we were able to kind of, I would say, hitch onto their wagon. I can't really get too into the details as to kind of what they're doing on the tech side. We've got a product called Redwood Connect, and I'll shoot you over a couple marketing videos that are public on it later. But it's a really, really special, kind of innovative, groundbreaking technology that's we're introducing into the logistics space. And so, kind of when we got the previews of what they were doing, we just had to be a part of it.
Do you when they give you these previews and everything, are NDAs involved? Like, are there NDAs?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Then, when Redwood was doing due diligence on you to acquire you, was there an NDA for them?
Sure. Yeah, we signed what was called like a mutual NDA, right? So,
okay.
Both the lawyers on each side go through it, and make sure everybody's covered. Because it was more important for us to have the NDA, right?
Yeah,
Because
of course.
the acquiring company kind of comes in and sees what you're doing and sees who your customers are, and kind of gets the full download on you, and then they can say, "Oh, we don't want to do the deal," and then they just go and.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. So now you have pretty much this job. How did the pandemic affect the whole thing?
It was
because I can imagine logistics and freight would actually boom during the pandemic.
So some of it did. It had you had some bumps, like when everybody went and bought all the toilet paper and the groceries right away. Like those stores had to be restocked, right? So you had bumps there. But the pandemic, the downturn, the crash in the economy hit logistics just like it did everyone else. I was very proud of the way that kind of Redwood handled that. We had a lot of our competitors that laid off 900 employees, just boom, gone, right? And Redwood didn't lay off a single employee, right? We sent everybody home, worked around the clock to kind of make sure everybody had what they needed to be able to work from home, and we covered the processes. And then we have really good partners in New York, and we didn't have to lay off a single employee, right? And then hey, we had a downturn, right? Just like everybody else did in those first few months, but we really recovered on the back half of 2020 and actually grew our business year over year, which is pretty remarkable.
Maybe a completely irrelevant question, but me looking as a European at the States, like, how do you think everything, like, you're like there? How bad was it? Like, because from our perspective, looking from Europe in, we were just thinking, like, what the hell is happening in America? You had the protests. Corona was handled like awfully from obviously the news perspective, but how was it actually? Like, you were there, you were part of a company. Like, was it really that bad, or was it like fine?
No, I mean it is bad, especially in the cities. In the big cities, it was bad, right? I was in Atlanta for a good part of it, and when the initial protests happened, we were locked inside our homes for 7 days, right? So it was bad, and I don't know if a lot of it was driven politically. It seems like these things happen every 4 years, and the temperature gets turned up really high every 4 years. But there's some things that there's a big movement here, and things seems to be changing or going to change, but I think what you'll see is the tone kind of go down over the next few months, right? There's been a change politically, and I think
that's
the rhetoric will die
interesting.
down.
What you just said. So every 4 years, the temperature gets turned up. Is that
you think about 2016? If you just look back in 2016 and 2012, right, the same types of things, the exact same things happened in 2016, except you didn't have 2015 leading up to the 2016 election, right? You didn't have the pandemic, but pandemic obviously made a lot of things worse, right? You had everybody kind of locked down at home, not being able to work, and kind of the temperature got turned up real high, and the kind of the evolution of social media has gotten to a point where it's.
Did you watch that Netflix show on the social media?
Oh yeah, it had me deleting my apps.
You watched it? What did you think of it?
It makes perfect sense. I agree with most of what was said in that documentary. Like, because you think about it and it's like, I always get these just awful notifications, like Lova posted for the first time in a while, and I'm like, I should see what Lova said, and now I'm on my app for an hour, right? So that, I think that it was definitely eye-opening, right? It definitely had me turning off all notifications.
Did you delete Facebook?
Definitely deleted Facebook.
Really?
As the app from my phone, like I still have it on my desktop, and I check it maybe once a week to see how families do it.
It's pretty bad, though. I mean, I feel like with all social media, it starts off noble and good and interesting and fun, but it's just Facebook has turned into something pretty awful. I never expected it that way.
The stuff in Myanmar, where like Facebook is the internet,
Yeah.
and it's not like these guys were just random guys talking about it. They were very high level at these social media companies talking about, hey, this is it's obviously created a ton of good things in our lives, right? But it's also
Do you think it's shifting towards more bad stuff, though? I've been lately having these thoughts that it did a lot of good, of course, but is it maybe now shifting towards the bad?
and maybe it's just that pendulum, right? Because the good was the good for so long, right? Connecting families, connecting people online, right? There's tons of things like, well, how did you communicate with people before the internet, right? And so you had that huge pendulum swing of all of this like really great innovation and really good things that came out of it, and kind of now you're seeing the pendulum swing back, right? Everything's a pendulum, right? It always swings back and forth, and so I think we're starting to get a lot of visibility to the negative effects of social media, and I think they'll depending on, I don't know what the timing will be, but I think steps will be taken to correct some of these things and mitigate.
I mean, it's
some of these
already
bad things.
happening. Did you hear Trump got blocked from Twitter permanently? That's that's quite a. I mean, on the one side, it's like a correction that kind of needed to happen because he was lying, and it's like, go talk bad, but don't lie. But on the other side, it's also like he's the president and he got blocked permanently.
If they can silence the president, like that's scary, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know how they'll work it out, right? And I think they probably don't need to decide that themselves, right?
I have to say, Jack Dorsey posted, I think, a tweet it was about how to see that, because a lot of people see Facebook and Twitter like a public forum. But Jack Dorsey pretty much said in his tweet, we're a private company and we're a company, we're our own company and we decide what is good for our company. And then the reason we block Trump is because he's bad for our company. And when you look at it that way, you start realizing like these companies are not government institutions. So then it's kind of their decision whether they block people or not. But they have so much more power than any government.
It's scary because they're more powerful than the government. But you're right. They're private companies and they should be able to enact their own policies, right? And I think that's kind of what he was saying. It's like, hey, if you have a policy and Trump violated that policy, then sure, right? But I think the backlash on Twitter was that they didn't really have a policy, right? They were just winging it as they went, right? You got people across the sea, calling for the genocide of other races and stuff like that. So it's not you're not enforcing a policy. You're just saying we don't like Trump, and it wasn't just Trump, right? There's a lot of conservatives, right? So a lot of the argument on that side is that, hey, like, you just purged people that think differently than you do.
But is it so? If I'm the devil's advocate, is it truly that they think differently? Or is it because they're lying and spreading things that is proven to be wrong? Because I've seen some conservatives that genuinely, I believe these are conservatives and they believe in America, it's usually Christian values and everything. They believe in leadership and just like human decency. But then you have these like conservatives, like right now in the news, that politician lady that just got into the House or whatever that believes in QAnon. That's just like,
I think you're watching a lot of CNN, man.
I don't know. No, I'm on YouTube. I'm watching everything from Fox News to everything to get the full perspective. But like from every perspective that you look, it's like QAnon. Come on, like.
Well, I mean, but I think so. You got to live in the middle. There's crazies on both sides. You got the lady in New York. What's her name? Alexandra Cortez, who refused Amazon because she thought she was going to have to pay them $4 billion in taxes. So you got people that are so stupid on that side, and you got people that are just as stupid on the other side, right? And I think the issue, I think one of the things that's
can we really compare somebody who doesn't understand corporate tax, which is also obviously not very smart, to somebody who believes in like things like we didn't go to the moon or something, or flat Earth? That's like not the same comparison.
Is it not? I mean, they're both conspiracy theories that somebody got convinced them of, right?
Yeah, maybe if you look at it from that perspective. But yeah, interesting. Anyways, a good. I lately got very interested in it, and I was talking with my girlfriend about it as to why. And I think with the pandemic, there was this YouTube comment I read that just summarized it. During the pandemic, the first wave hit, and like Netflix and all these companies went up in stocks. Everybody was watching everything on YouTube, Netflix, everything. And then the first wave kind of went away, and things like start to calm down. And obviously, the second wave came because of that. But I feel like, just like me, a lot of people were like bored out of their minds in the second wave. You watched like almost everything on Netflix. That there were no new movies because of the pandemic. Everything was postponed, and so there was pretty much just one show left that was really interesting. And at least like on this side of the ocean, we called that show America. Like if you watch Fox News and CNN and all these, it's like the most interesting TV show that you cannot script. It's like reality TV times 10. Like the Capitol thing that happened, that was just crazy. Like you cannot even imagine a TV show that would have the balls to think of something like that.
It's like you had the characters from Duck Dynasty storming the it's unbelievable.
That Viking guy, I was like, you can't make this shit up. Like, how? It's so like horrible.
We're laughing about it, but it's not funny. It is.
No, it's not.
So awful.
But it is incredibly addicting to watch, is my point. And so I feel like I'm kind of a symptom of a lot of people that are not Americans. Like, it's a pandemic, we're all locked up, there's nothing to watch, and America is kind of incredibly interesting. And so we're stuck, the rest of the world is stuck watching America implode or something. I don't know what's happening there. So it's obviously interesting to speak to someone who actually runs there, a business, is like part of it. And so it is interesting to hear what you're saying, like obviously as to how the protests were, and how both sides...
Yeah, but you think of it, you look at it now versus 3 months ago or 4 months ago. Right? There's no more protests.
Really?
Right?
But I mean, most of
there's been political change, and
I think most of the people got kicked out off the platform. I think that's partially why the protests...
Well, the protests were not the... there's two sides, right? The protests were... the Black Lives Matter, over the George Floyd protests over the summer, right?
Right.
And those went on and on until the election, and they stopped.
They stopped.
They're not having anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. And you had the one protest, or I don't know, you can't call that a protest. The storming of the Capitol was really the only incident from the crazy Trumpers, and I feel like that's kind of stopped too. Trump kind of has come out and said, like, hey, don't do this, even though he felt like he
Did
told
you
him
hear
to
he wants to... Oh my God, we're getting very political now. But did you hear he's starting a third party? I'm telling you, this show has so many twists. It's crazy.
Oh, he's going to buy... I heard it was just a rumor. He's going to buy OAN. Is some kind of...
What's that?
Conservative... It's like some kind of conservative news network. So he's going to buy OAN and build his own Trump media to take on Fox News.
Totally see that happen. He had Trump,
which is what he should do.
It's like Trump University, and then it's like Trump News.
Yeah.
That I didn't hear that one, but so apparently he's starting a third party, which I think is gonna be hilarious to see. It's like
if I didn't live here.
You say that, but in 2020, before the pandemic hit, like we had set budget aside to go to LA. Like I was ready. I had already talked with the Dutch government. They have a satellite office there where I think it's in WeWork, so they would have provided like some office space for us to get oriented. I was literally like ready to maybe like see if we can move our company there or like open a new office there. See how the visa process would work and stuff like that. And then the pandemic hit, and literally like all the bad stuff popped up, like the tax in California and how everybody's moving away.
Yeah, I've moved 3 clients out of California this year.
Really?
In the last few months.
Oh yeah,
Just
like,
because 17% state tax, it's insane.
yeah. And then also like the living situation there with all the smog and the traffic and the homelessness. So that got exposed. Then the whole racism thing, which obviously everybody knew was happening in America, but from Europe, like I didn't expect it to be that bad. I didn't know like how everything was structured, so that got exposed. And then the whole like how fanatical people are, like whether it is left or right doesn't matter. I think the whole two-party system is so weird. We don't have that. We don't have that in the
Yeah, but
Netherlands.
I don't think it's that bad, right? So what you see, what Fox News does and what CNN does is they go and they take 10 people that are absolutely batshit crazy, and then whatever they're doing, and then they extrapolate that and they project it onto 70 million people. And they make you think like, oh, well, 70 million people think and act this way, when really it's just like some fucking crazies in Western Kentucky, or some.
But I mean, you can't deny,
Idiots out of
for
Portland.
instance, that if you would move your company from Europe, right, and you would open up an office, like you shouldn't do that in California. The
No, do it in
taxes are
Texas.
ridiculous.
Do it in Texas or Florida.
But so the argument is like, so my argument was that, okay, not LA because California is crazy. Silicon Valley is extremely expensive, so San Francisco is out as well. So now we're left with New York, which is crazy
No.
expensive as well.
Don't do there.
Or Texas. I was in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. But here's my personal issue with Texas. I love the food, I love the people and everything, but everybody has guns there. And for me as a European, that is weird.
Let me tell you a story. I used to live in Texas. So me and Hannah, we just moved out there. We're with Koch Industries of Georgia Pacific, and it's my first job out of school. And we're at the post office getting our passports. And we're waiting in line, and we're going through the line or whatever. And this little old lady, she's got to be 92 years old. Like just like this, she's all like hunched over, and she's with her cane and walks up to the window right next to us. And so Hannah's talking to the guy or whatever, and I'm standing there, and she pulls out this giant bag and sits it up on the table, and she's looking for her wallet or something out of her bag. And she pulls out this revolver and sets it down. We're in a post office, a federal building, and pulls out this revolver. And it's got a barrel like so huge on it. And I immediately am like, oh my God, like, what is this lady doing? And I'm looking around, like, surely everybody else is like crazy. Nobody bats an eye. Like, completely normal, like, no big deal. And I was just like, Hannah, are you getting this? Like, this ancient old lady just pulled out a gun that's bigger than her and set it on the table. Like, it's no big, like, it's nothing.
Where was this in Texas?
So this was in Lufkin, Texas. So it's a little town about maybe 2 hours north of Houston on the East Texas.
Jeez. But that's what I mean. It's like that lady is not a trained professional in the army who has a track record. Like, if you want to get a gun in Europe, I mean, you gotta have some really good reason. And then you still have to, I think, lock it up at the gun range. You're not allowed to carry it around. I mean, you have countries like Switzerland where they have active duty. But every citizen is trained in the army how to use a gun properly. It's not Texas where people like have shotguns and shoot the sign and stuff like that.
It's not just Texas. It's everywhere. Texas is known for it. But America was founded on the right to bear arms, right?
No,
and
of course.
It's one of the reasons we've never been invaded.
No, but imagine my thought process is, okay, I moved to Austin, right? Like if I'd go anywhere in Texas, it'd be Austin. I'd move to Austin. What if I have a car and I'm driving and it's like, I don't know, somebody has a bad day and road rage happens. I don't know why on my YouTube recommended it's been popping up a lot, but like somebody has road rage, cuts me off. Unfortunately, I'm the kind of person that would like drive by the window and be like, hey dude, what the fuck did you just do? I can just imagine in America, or at least in Texas, that person would pull a gun on me.
You've been watching way too much TV, man. That shit doesn't happen.
No? I don't know. I'm just like thinking, in Europe, I know that's not going to happen. But in America, like, am I watching too much TV? Because it's pretty scary. I watched a YouTube recommended. It's so bad. I watched a YouTube recommended video. I restarted MMA, and so I was watching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu videos. And the Gracies, the founders of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they are posting all the time these videos of one of their students like setting, like getting into like a situation and then resolving it with their martial arts. But this one video was a guy who fucking like shouldn't curse, but he just pulled out a gun out of his. There was like a road rage situation. Gets out the car, pulls out a gun, and just tells the guy that is raging on him to calm down. And I'm just thinking, okay, yes, that prevented the situation, but at the same time, he's holding a gun to prevent, like, that. If from a European perspective, that's really weird.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anyways, what are you going to do once the pandemic goes away? Do you have trips planned?
Yeah, so we've been planning to go to Tokyo last year for the Olympics.
Nice.
We'll go this year as long as it happens and we're allowed to. I've got a employee, he's a guy who works directly for me that I hired when I were LTX, named Solomon Simmons. And so Solomon is the #1 U.S. decathlete.
Oh, you told me about him.
Yeah, he's pretty special, and so he's going to compete over there in the Olympics.
Oh, he's competing. How is he working and training for the Olympics?
It's unbelievable, man. So when I hired him, he was training for the Olympics, and I was like, well, how is this going to work? Like, are you going to like have to take time off to train? Like, what's how does it work? And he goes, oh, well, if your hours are 8 to 5 or whatever, and I work out from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. and then from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, so that works out great. And I was like, oh yeah, me too.
So, and he does it. He's like,
it's unbelievable his ability to. He's God-given natural gifts, right? He's 6'6" and looks the part. But his work ethic and his discipline is truly special to watch. Even when I would have him, before the pandemic, we would travel. We'd go up to Chicago or on a conference or a customer visit or something, and he brings this the shot put ball. He's got like a travel shot put ball that he brings with him. So he'll go 5 a.m. he'll go find some high school track to train on and go train with them. In the afternoons, they'll go just to the high school and train with the track team. And of course they are just like, oh my god, it's like a celebrity coming.
I would say that's something that is really cool about America, like the sports and how that's promoted. I think there are very few countries that I've been to where you can just walk in and just there are incredible facilities to train. I think, well, if I'm looking at where I live, like I used to live in Belgium and Netherlands, like maybe at big universities that have a lot of money, would you find like these amazing tracks? But in America, I feel like every major high school would have it.
Oh yeah, you go to high schools in Texas, and their facilities are as nice as the colleges, universities.
I visited Duke University 10 years ago, North Carolina in Raleigh, and I mean, it's amazing, like beautiful.
Yeah, we were there a couple of years ago for a business conference, and it's a special area.
Well, I have to say, so Duke is amazing, but then once you get outside of the university, it's like, where am I?
You're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, middle of nowhere, exactly. Because it was the first time I went away from the big cities in America, or I think maybe afterwards I went once to Florida. But so I went from New York, took a bus to North Carolina to Duke, but they dropped me at like the main station at Raleigh, and then from there you still have to go to Duke. Yeah. So I remember getting dropped there and then thinking, this doesn't look like New York. Like, this looks so different.
Nothing looks like New York, except maybe, Hong Kong or.
Have you been to Hong Kong?
No, I haven't. Have you?
No, I haven't, but I'd be scared going now.
Yeah, I would, just because of what I see on TV. I don't know. Well, and Matt Skelcher was there during all that, and he was
During the pandemic.
or during their protests, the initial protests right before
Really?
the pandemic. Yeah,
I mean,
he was there.
based on that logic, Thingy was there during the Capitol thing. Gun, did you see it?
Gunn, yeah, I saw.
He was,
he was there afterwards, right? He was there afterwards.
I think he was there during, because I was watching
was
his Facebook stories. They always pop up, and he always like shares things about cryptocurrency. But then he was sharing about Washington, and I think he was there just before. I'm not sure if he was there during. I should probably get him on the podcast and catch up with him.
Yeah.
But I actually was following his cryptocurrency Facebook stories, and I bought Bitcoin and made like, I think like €1,000 or something. So
I wish I had bought it when he told me in Bali. I think it was Bali.
he told
like,
me
yeah.
he told me in Vegas, which was 4 years ago. If I had bought it back then, I would have been a millionaire. But yeah.
Yeah, I just put like $10,000 in it when he told me in Bali. I was like, "Oh, you're crazy."
Wait, you did buy it or not?
No, I didn't buy
Okay.
it. I completely missed it.
But what do you think now of what's happening with this whole Reddit and GameStop thing?
It's interesting,
It's
I
the
don't-
first time something like that is happening. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it. Any kind of discount trading platform like that, like they have in their user agreements where they can, stop trading if they think it's going to.
Really,
negatively
Robinhood
affect the
had
firm.
that in their agreement?
I'm sure, right? So essentially, right, they put in their brokerage, right, the agreement that hey, like they can stop trading on any stock if they think it's going to negatively impact their firm, right? And I'm sure Robinhood had it. All of them have it, right? And that's like I think what they're afraid of is like all these people are going to end up with these big equity positions and get stuck holding the bag, right? It seems that with Robinhood, though, it's maybe a little bit different, right? Where their main customer is these hedge funds in New York who were just getting their ass handed to them, and so on these short sales. So it was really interesting how it was very dangerous one day, and they had to stop trading on the stock, to protect the retail investor. But then that night, the hedge funds were able to get out of their shorts.
Yeah.
And the next day, it's like, okay, it's safe to trade again.
I thought it was so weird. It didn't make sense. Because the thing that bothered me is maybe, okay, there's an argument to have had if it does affect like Robinhood, right? But then they just like crash the app or something, or you can't buy or sell. The issue was that what Robinhood did is they cut off everybody from buying more, so
But
people
not
could
selling.
only sell, and
They
that's
intentionally crashed the stock.
shady.
I don't understand how that's legal.
Yeah,
I
was like,
I don't know, but it seems
okay,
like that should
there's
not
an
be legal.
argument for just stop buying and selling, and then somehow spin some story.
Because that happens, right? Whenever there's a trigger in the market, like if it crashes 30%, the entire market will stop. I think it's like 10 minutes or something, right? It's so that people can like calm down and you don't lose your head.
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
then those triggers happen, but I've never seen it. It's like you intentionally crash those stocks.
Yeah,
by-
I've never seen somebody decide, okay, you can sell but not buy. I thought that was so weird.
But also, like what I was saying is like, who are you selling? If you can't buy it, who is buying it when you sell it? But you can sell it. Who's buying it when you sell it?
Well, everybody that's not on Robinhood, which is pretty much everybody that isn't.
yeah.
Well, actually, nobody will be buying then, which is good for Robinhood because they're crashing GameStop and everybody else.
Yeah.
It was just so weird. Because I wanted to get the full perspective, because I don't like just judging, like being left, right, whatever. So I actually saw an interview with the CEO of Robinhood to hear his argument, like what was the reason for that. And there's a point in the interview where the guy, I think it was a CNBC interview, and the interviewer asked the guy, "Oh, it sounds like it's a liquidity issue," because that's how he was argumenting it. And the CEO literally stops the interviewer and says, "No, no, it's not a liquidity issue. We have enough money." So then I was just,
Yeah, you say there's a liquidity issue, and everybody pulls out their money. That's a dangerous thing to say.
So weird, but it was an interesting development.
Yeah, because you hear I don't know if you follow Dave Portnoy with Barstool Sports.
No,
he's a pretty outspoken guy. He's really funny, but also he's during the pandemic he started this Dave's day trading gang or whatever, and he's just an amateur trader. But he got real big into the GameStop, and he's basically he made a good point. He said that day, the CEO of Robinhood, right, woke up, got that. They're saying that he got a phone call from the hedge funds in New York to tell him hey, you've got to restrict the trading. But he made a decision to stop trading and basically screw his entire client base, knowing that that's going to be the end of Robinhood. These guys are not going to come back.
Did you hear what happened? So apparently everybody went on the App Store, 100,000 people, and gave it a 1-star review. And then, oh, you didn't hear this? Okay, no. So everybody had 100,000 plus 1-star reviews, and the Google App Store deleted all of the 1-star reviews to not negatively impact Robinhood because it was such a popular app. You didn't hear this?
No,
that's
I didn't hear.
crazy.
That's crazy.
I was literally thinking they're literally screwing over the little guy. These people who are dependent on the little guy are screwing us over. That does not make sense. I'm lately started to follow this American Indian guy, Hamatz, this billionaire guy. I don't know if you know him, the CEO of Social Capital or something like that. Really straight to the point guy. He was on an interview with I don't know who, and the interviewer, it's a news organization. The interviewer is asking him what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to let the airlines go bankrupt? And this guy literally just answers. He's a billionaire. He literally just answers yes. They're mismanaged. They shouldn't be survived. Screw them. But what he did add to that is when a company like that goes bankrupt, the employees aren't the ones that usually lose jobs or anything. They just get replaced and get placed in other jobs and stuff like that. They don't lose that much money. The ones that lose all the money are all the hedge funds and all the investors, the ones that are billionaires. So I found that a very interesting perspective on the whole situation. Because it kind of shows this is the first time in history, I think, where the little guy through Robinhood could potentially actually do some damage to these hedge funds. But the reaction to that is so fascinating to watch. I did not expect that.
They just changed the rules.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways.
It's crazy.
Crazy interesting. Anyways, I think we've been talking for an hour and a half already, so maybe I want to roll out a red carpet to you. Tell the people where they can find you, what you've been up to lately, some cool stuff to share, things you're learning.
Oh, sure, yeah. You can follow me on Instagram.
You have Instagram? I don't think I'm following you.
I don't post a lot, but I do a little bit. I think it's ryan.t.tripp. I'm up in Chicago now, so we've been.
Oh, yeah, you moved.
We moved, yeah.
You living next to Michael Jordan already?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen His Highness or His Airness, but it's good. We moved up here. We kind of took our time getting up here, and so we got here about a week and a half ago, and it has just dumped snow on us. We're supposed to get 10 inches of snow today.
Really? But you have dogs, right? You have 2 dogs.
We have 1 dog. Yeah.
Oh, 1 dog. So how is snow like for a dog? Because you were in the south, and now you're in the north, like in Chicago.
Yeah, it's interesting. He like will kind of look at it, and he like prances, like hops in it. He's like an 85-pound dog, and he looks ridiculous. It's pretty funny how he has interacted with it.
I used a lot of tips because when we got a puppy, obviously we texted. We used a lot of tips that you gave me, and really nice. He doesn't bark, so we've been getting a lot of compliments from other people who babysit him and everything. We've been using some like discipline things that you said, like positive reinforcement as well. He still has the sheets above his like bench. He likes like his little cage type of like he has an open gate, but he likes having his own room. Yeah. So yeah, appreciate it. We've been getting a lot of compliments on him. Obviously, he's a small dog, ours, but yeah, a lot of tips helps. So thanks. You should become Ryan the dog whisperer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool. We're up here for a little bit. We're gonna go back down south in maybe a couple weeks. Kind of miss February is just so rough up here as far as the cold, and so we're gonna go back down to the beach. Maybe head over to Cancun for a little bit.
How isn't Cancun? Is that America? No.
No, it's Mexico.
So how?
I've actually gotten the vaccine.
What? How?
Oh yeah. Through where transportation is 1C.
You got the vaccine, and we've been talking for 2 hours, and you never mentioned it. Like what? Tell me more, please. Like how? What? How did you get it so early? And which vaccine did you get?
So I got the Moderna vaccine. Here they're rolling out that they've been doing over 1 million vaccines a day since about 7 days before the inauguration. So there's tons and tons of vaccines going out. Chicago has done a really good job with their rollout.
So you've had the first one or the second one already?
So I've had the first one. I still haven't had my booster shot yet.
How was
I'll get
it?
that in a couple weeks.
Any side effects?
It was fine, right? So they gave me the shot. I didn't feel the needle going in. Like that's fine. Took a few seconds, really, maybe less than a minute. Then they asked you to wait in your car for 15 minutes before you drive home, just to make sure nothing happens. I was fine. Had a little bit of I wouldn't even say it's a head cold. Just stuffy nose a little bit that day, but the next morning was fine. The only thing though is I got it in this shoulder, and the pain in that shoulder, just where I got the shot, for like 2 days I couldn't lift my arm above my head.
Really?
Yeah. But
why do
I
you think that
is? That happens a lot with shots. Like the flu shot, you get sore too. Not typically not that bad, but it really wasn't. It wasn't. I'm making it sound worse than it was, but that was the only thing that I noticed.
Nice. Have you had the virus or not?
No, or not that I'm aware of. We got tested. We did. Redwood did a really good job of providing, providing tests.
Were you doing those PCR tests, the one where they stuffed the tube, like the thing down
all the way up into your brain?
Horrible.
It wasn't so bad. It just it tickled. It was just
tickled. I had to do
like 10 minutes afterwards.
I had to do it. But I'm a pussy when it comes to those things. So the day before, obviously super worried, couldn't sleep. Because I saw all the videos and everybody's like, yeah, it goes into your brain and stuff. So obviously I watched too much YouTube. So I did the test and I was like ready for the one that goes through your nose, and then apparently it goes all the way to and it touches it touched my tongue at least. Yeah. Somehow I had biology in school, but I had completely blanked that thing goes like completely, like that you can somehow stuff something through your nose and touch your tongue. I didn't know that. But
I guess that makes sense. Like if you just breathe in through your nose, you can breathe out through your mouth.
So that one actually wasn't that bad, and that was the one I was worried about. But then they stuffed the one in my throat, and they had to do it like 3 times because I couldn't, because they go really deep. But I have to say, once I did it, it wasn't as bad anymore. But I haven't done it since then, though. So I'm really excited for the vaccine. My girlfriend's mom got the vaccine, but she's a nurse.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've, especially in Chicago, they've completed the phase one, which was, the elderly and the healthcare, and moved on to kind of phase one.
I think in the Netherlands they didn't even like they're barely in phase one. Like
Wow.
it's weird. Germany's having huge issues with logistics as well. I found out. So apparently, what they did in Germany, in the region where my girlfriend's family lives, they put the vaccine center in like some place in the middle of nowhere, instead of putting it next to a city that has like a proper train station where the public transport can just easily access it. So it's either you have a car and you can reach that small city, or you just don't get a vaccine. So stuff like that's been happening all over Europe. It's pretty weird. And now the Netherlands is all over the news because of all the riots as well.
Yeah,
So
I don't even notice. I don't watch the news. So what's going on over there?
I don't watch the news. I watch YouTube, and then the news just bombards me. But no. So we've had the prime minister invoked a curfew. So after 9 o'clock until 4:30 in the morning, you're not allowed to walk outside. And so on the first day, what happened is you had all those like, I think they were mostly youth, that were just like rebelling and everything. And so at 9 o'clock, it was like a full on like riot, and they actually like started breaking into shops. And the other day I was watching a video from a news organization called, like, they do mostly like YouTube videos, and they're funny and entertaining. I wouldn't really call them news, but they're called POW News, POW News. And the guy was doing a piece on one of the jewelry stores from a lady here in Rotterdam. They got broken into, completely ruined, everything stolen, like 50,000 euros worth of jewelry. And this lady was from Iraq, and she fled Iraq because of the war to go live in the Netherlands. And so in this piece, it's like she's literally like crying, and it's like breaking my heart. And this guy, this interviewer who's usually just really funny, like you can see it's breaking his heart as well. And I'm just like thinking how sad, like this lady left Iraq for like the Netherlands. Like the Netherlands, and she had a worse experience here than there. But that's pretty much what's happening in the Netherlands now.
So why are they rioting? Just
because of the curfew. Like there's literally no other reason. It's just like the curfew.
the curfew is because of the
So
COVID?
what's been happening is the numbers have like been going crazy over Christmas, but then now they've been steadily going down. But apparently the British variation of the coronavirus entered the Netherlands somehow, and like they have these like formulas, and apparently like if you're above 1, that's like really bad. So for the normal virus, we're under 1, I think, and for the British variant, which spreads much faster, we were like at 1.3 or something, which is a really bad thing because it spreads really fast. And so the prime minister said, well, because it's so bad, we decided to do a curfew because like we need to combat it. And so obviously, a lot of people are scientists nowadays, so they're like they start writing. But I mean, I get it on the one side, because like people literally don't have jobs, don't have money. Although I do have to say, the government did pass a lot of bills and support and money in case you couldn't afford it. It's not perfect, but it's definitely, I would say, one of the better countries in the world on how
Yeah,
to
that's
handle
good.
it.
I think we had that issue too, right? Where you had everybody. It was 2 weeks to slow the spread. Everybody was going to go home for 2 weeks, and that turned into longer, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, you should have opened back up. It never ended. It was just like this perpetual shutdown. Right, over the summer and into the fall, you should have opened back up. That way, when it got cold in the winter and you needed to lock down again, people would have been more willing to do it and understanding. But you had this perpetual lockdown that never was going to end. And when you said, then, the cases started getting worse because it's cold weather, people are back indoors all the time, and it makes sense. But, by that time, people were just like, we're over it. And so you still do have a lot of resistance.
I mean, I would argue that even during the summer, they tried to open it up here, but there were people that just did not listen to the guidelines. And it's always like the few that ruin it for everybody else. And like the cases never went down. And then it's just, I can't wait till the vaccine rolls out. I saw an interview with Fauci, and he said that apparently like it's just going to get way worse before it gets better. So that's the sad part, of course. But yeah, we just got to sit it out now. So, but that's what's happening in the Netherlands now. The curfew. We're hoping like in a couple of weeks it'll be lifted. Although the way things are and the riots and everything, honestly, like I don't like. We're planning our business strategy and everything. And I pretty much told my team like after summer. I genuinely think with how everything is going, we see how screwed up logistically everybody is. Like these governments are not tech startups. They're not LTX that knows exactly how to do like a speedboat things. I mean, you just see that they're screwing up left and right. And I guess it's okay. They're a big organization. I've seen corporates screw up the same way and they do fix it eventually. It's just, it takes a while. And so I told my team just, September. I think, best case June, probably September. And it's even possible that if the vaccine suddenly doesn't cover the British variant, man, don't want to say it, but
Yeah, I think what they're hoping the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was going to cover that, but I think they got some disappointing news. So the markets crashed like 200-300 points the other day.
I did see that.
Yeah, it went down. I think it was on Thursday or Friday. It went down 200 points, and they're saying it's because a little bit of disappointing news on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Really? But I heard that the Pfizer vaccine would cover the British.
I heard the Pfizer and the Moderna both covered the British one. So I don't know. It's just so hard to keep up with.
But I have to say, like, the positive news is they really got it going. And they got, like, good vaccines going, ones that were based on, like, solid research that on the first SARS-CoV vaccine that they had working. So I'm genuinely impressed in how in less than a year they got these vaccines.
Yeah, that's something, Trump kind of ruined it for himself right there at the very end. But his vaccine plan and the rollout was very, very impressive.
Really? Because I heard it was bad.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I heard that apparently the new person that is in charge for the logistics of rolling out the vaccine looked at the Trump plan, and apparently there was like almost no plan. It was all fake.
Well, that's all political, right? So they came out and they said, "Oh, there's no plan. We've got to build it from scratch." And then Dr. Fauci was like, "No, there's a plan. It's the one you're implementing.
Oh, really?
It's the one. It's the one that's been delivering 1 million vaccines a day for a while."
News. That's good news. But I mean, still, 1 million a day. Isn't America like 365 million people or something? That's like a year worth of vaccines.
Yeah, but there's a point where you reach herd immunity as well, right? And I don't know all the science to that, but I think they're trying to vaccinate the elderly and the healthcare workers first, right? And then they're moving into the people who are, not maybe at risk, but at greatest risk of spreading the virus. And so at some point you do reach herd immunity. I don't know what that number is, but
honestly, I think they should be vaccinating the children that go to school.
I think that they're talking about that as well.
That would make more sense than people who can just work at home.
Yeah.
But anyways, we can talk about this stuff for hours. Has nothing to do with the podcast. But I think it's a good conversation to have, especially because it is relevant to what we do as entrepreneurs. And I'm happy for you. I'm happy how everything went down with the acquisition. That you guys are doing something fun now. You're obviously moved to Chicago. Enjoy the snow. We only had 1 day of snow here, so I've been missing it.
I assume y'all get, where is the Netherlands on the line?
The Netherlands is like,
cold weather?
well, it's, Netherlands is like, I don't know, in
It
relation
gets pretty
to
cold.
America.
It gets pretty cold, right? Like in terms of like, it's like on the same level as New York.
Yeah, man, my geography is bad, but I'm assuming yes, because the weather is quite similar to New York. Although we haven't had snow in like 3 years here.
Oh wow.
So we had this 1 day snow like a couple of weeks ago, and that was awesome. So, but we haven't had snow in like 3 or 4 years.
That's interesting. Paris gets snow, right?
Maybe it's because we're closer to the beach here. Like the beach is like 20 minutes away
right.
from here, so maybe it's just a milder climate. Because when you go to like Germany, it's like pretty much what you said about Chicago, just full of snow.
Yeah. Yeah, Chicago's great because it's got it's on one of the Great Lakes, so it's got the beaches.
Really, I didn't know that.
And then it's got snow and it has all the seasons.
And it has the Chicago Bulls, although Michael Jordan's not there anymore. Did you see that documentary from Michael Jordan?
It was so cool. I loved it. I grew up in the MJ era. I played basketball in college, and yeah.
Anyways, now we have to wrap up. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll definitely invite you again. Hopefully people loved some of the first part of the podcast and hopefully the second part as well. But any last words you want to say?
Yeah, no, appreciate you having me on. This was fun. Love to do it again. Yeah, I can't wait till we can meet up in person again.
If you liked this episode, you can check out our most recent one here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click here to subscribe and see the next one. But if you're interested in more tips and tricks, then make sure to join our Facebook group where you can find thousands of like-minded people and you get direct access and support to any business question from the entire startup funding event team.